Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Bulent playing in the Tier 10 British turreted tank destroyer, or should I say at least one of the two Tier 10 British turreted tank destroyers. It is the FV4005. I have not featured this tank on this channel in, gosh, 3 years now. Absolutely crazy stuff, because it's been the most bizarre of tanks, really. It's an FV215B183 that pretty much sacrificed all of the armor capabilities, but none of the weapon capabilities, as Bulent removes pretty much all of the hit points off that poor FV4202 to be able to gain extra mobility. But you had to sacrifice so much. This turret is only, I believe, 14 millimeters thick, and so that means that everything in the game is going to overmatch it. And yeah, you just imagine what happens when an artillery shell hits this tank. It certainly is ugly. However, 9.20.1 is here, and Wargaming decided that I guess they wanted to give a little bit of love to arguably one of the worst tank destroyers at tier 10, and just so irrelevant because everybody would play the FV215B183 unless they just wanted to play this for the sake of it and maybe troll a few tanks. So what has happened? Well, look at the bottom of your screen. That's quite a lot of rounds to have of 183mm ammunition, right? This tank now carries 20 rounds, and that's one of the key weaknesses of the FV215B183 and what the FV4005 was previously in the patch. Previously, this tank only carried 12 rounds, and so quite often you would run out of ammunition mid-part of the game. Later on in the game, of course, the reload is still very long, so you'd have to be continuously firing for about 5 minutes or so to be able to fire all of the rounds. Nevertheless, with an extra 8 rounds of ammunition, it just means that you can take more armor-piercing rounds. And everybody takes a lot of these filthy Hesh rounds on this tank. That's what everybody knows these vehicles for. They have 230mm of penetration and 1,750 alpha damage. How absolutely disgusting is that? They also cost about 8,000 credits. It's kind of like a gold noob ammunition, but at least it's balanced in a way. Because look at the armor-piercing penetration on this tank. The armor-piercing is 310. Now the Hesh rounds on this tank, it goes down to 230. So to be able to gain alpha damage, you lose penetration, but you kind of gain the high explosive potential as well. I still think the Hesh rounds on this vehicle are all round the best, but the armor-piercing rounds, just being able to take them, to have that little bit extra flexibility, or maybe when you just want to cut your ammunition cost by 75%, it is rather useful. Now that's a Conqueror on the enemy team, even though it looks a lot like a Super Conqueror, and you're going to see, wow, that's what 183mm of penetration will do for you. That means you can overmatch 60mm plates, and because the top of the Conqueror, I believe, is 50.8mm thick, that means that it will be able to auto-ricochet all 152mm caliber guns, like on the ISU-152, for example, but the 183mm on this tank is going to overmatch right through that. That's what not a lot of people realize about the armor-piercing rounds on this tank. It's just previously you couldn't carry enough ammunition, and so taking those armor-piercing rounds just felt like you then might not have the Hesh rounds to either pull off the one-shots, or when you just had to whiff at a highly armored turret like on the IS-7, and you still wanted to do about 500-600 damage. Now, Bulent has managed to pick up 2 kills, 5,200 damage with the first 5 shots of the game. Really good marksmanship, and that's because this gun is now more flexible than ever. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression. That's doubled from 5 degrees. Not that really that's going to be all that useful on this map, but one thing you might be noticing is this gun can turn more to the left and to the right. That wasn't an AP round, that was a Hesh round, but that one still went right in through the front of the Tier 9 French auto-loading heavy tank. This vehicle's gun traverse has doubled. Previously it was 45 degrees to the light, or even into the left. Is the light a combination of left and right? Well, yeah, we're just going to go with light anyway. 45 degrees to the left, 45 degrees to the right. Now it is 90 degrees to the left and 90 degrees to the right, which just makes it so much more flexible. And clutch shot there. And that's also because the turret traverse dispersion on this vehicle has been buffed a little bit as well. It is now 0.3. Now that's still terrible, but it's not as bad as it was previously at 0.34. And so you can snap in shots in this tank a lot more accurately than you previously could. And so that means that in the first 5 minutes of this game, Bulent is up to 7,000 damage and also 4 kills. But his team is still neck and neck with 8 kills apiece, 7 tanks remaining, make that now 9 kills apiece with 6 tanks remaining on either side. But Bulin is going to change that rather quickly. Goodbye, Frenchie. Now, he did get a little bit lucky there. That shell looks like it went into the top left to go into the cupola, but I guess he just didn't want to lose that 390 average hit points that he would have against the tier 8 premium French tank destroyer. Now I want to show you something else about this tank. You might notice that it's actually quite nippy now. Now, on stage 1 of the test server, this vehicle could go at 50 kilometers an hour, and it was pretty crazy. Wargaming tuned this down, it's got the same top speed limit at 35, but the power to weight is just so much better. They've given it 300 extra horsepower. So now we're talking about having a power to weight ratio of 18.62. compared to previously when it was 12.79. And so it's basically become a lot more like a decent medium tank, whereas previously it was more like a heavy. And so you're starting to see that all of the differences between this and the FV215B are becoming more and more pronounced. Well, I should say the FV215B 183, let me clarify that. So now I just feel that this vehicle has a purpose, and while I think that Wargaming are definitely on the right path of buffing this tank because it was one of the least competitive vehicles, we're just going to have to see in the next few weeks and months whether it's maybe just a little bit too much. But I think this vehicle still has a hell of a lot of drawbacks. You're never really bouncing anything unless you get super lucky off the hull, and that turret is god-awful. And you know what? This has been a fantastic situation for Bulin, where he hasn't been caught out in the open. All of the fighting has been at close quarters because the camera rating on this tank is awful. And there we can see the WZ-132A on the enemy team. That tier 9 Chinese light tank puts a good old round into him, but doesn't manage to finish him off. And it looks like the WZ leaves the cap circle but then goes back in it, I guess panicking a little bit at the fact that the most dangerous gun in the game is about to bear down upon him. Now he fires, but he doesn't go behind the bush to be able to sneak a shot in, and so that means that he gets spotted, and Bulin secures the kill, secures the cap, but oh dear, artillery, and yeah. I'm actually glad that happened, because it showed just how min-max this tank is. You got to see the strengths, you got to see the weaknesses, and if artillery does manage to hit your turret, it doesn't matter if artillery has had its penetration nerfed so much in the last few patches, it's still gonna go into 14 millimeters of armor, and that really is the key downside to this vehicle. And I guess I'll just have to leave it up to you to decide whether the benefits are worth the drawbacks. And just to show you how trolled this mobility and flexibility is on this tank, here I am playing on Siegfried line yesterday. At the end of the game, look at that turret going all the way to the right, just gonna broadside something as if you're a battleship, and with a 183mm caliber gun, it's not too far off. We come round, and we've got so much mobility and just assurance there with the fully, well, not the fully, but the semi-traversable turret, that we can avoid the other tanks and then just drive back into safety. Sure, they tunnel visioned a little bit. Sure, I was maybe lucky that the WZ-121 FT didn't shoot me, but hopefully I'm trying to hit home here, that this is no longer just a bad FV215B 183. It's kind of novel in its own right. Those one-shots. Well, at least they're never going to get old. Well, thinking about it, maybe they will get old pretty darn quickly. I'm not sure what I think about this tank. I think, sure, it's fun at the moment, but is it going to be a bit like a Foch B? Is it going to be like a WT Alfie 100? Maybe I'm just terrified about tier 10 tank destroyers being super powerful and having that awesome gun. But let's be honest, this vehicle is as close to a medium tank as you possibly could be. Did I bounce an AP shell there? Look at me trying to cheap out at the end of the game. And so when you give a tank destroyer, or shall I say, a tank with the most dangerous gun in the game, the kind of mobility and flexibility of a heavy tank or kind of a medium tank, but just give it absolutely garbage camo rating and the worst turret in the game, it's kind of min-maxing. And whenever you do that, things start to get a little bit dangerous. But once again, the jury is still out, and we'll have to keep an eye on its global damage and win ratio. So Bulin nailed an ace tanker, 1,405 base experience points, a Radley Walters medal for his 8 kills, and a high caliber for 9,192 damage in less than 7 minutes. His marksmanship was impeccable, 11-11-11, but he did lose some credits, but that's not nearly as bad as it could be in one of the most expensive vehicles in the game, and I wonder if Bulin might want to take a few more armor piercing piercing shells in his subsequent rounds in the FE4005, considering how darn successful he was with them. So Bulin, thank you so much for uploading your replay onto the What Replays website for the community to enjoy and showing us all what the FE4005 Stage 2 is all about with the buffs. And hopefully all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about the FE4005 Stage 2. Do you think it's a buff gone too far, or do you think that it was much needed and Wargaming have approached this in the right way? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.